Hello, everybody. This is Baxter Flapjack, and I come from all the way from Corvallis, Oregon, here to say go Bees and go Pac-12. Hopefully, we'll get the Bobcats, and by Bobcats, I mean the Texas State Bobcats. I am so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be part of this team. Shout out to JEH. You're awesome. Go Bees. Hello, welcome back once again to Bobcat Corner. This is Stephen Vitt reporting yet again, and this is episode number 44 of Bobcat Corner. And we do have a little bit of news to report, not necessarily of the Bobcats, but it does affect the Mid American Conference in some way as it appears. There are going to be like two topics I'm going to be discussing here in this episode, one about a Mid American Conference team, and another about the general landscape of college football concerning revenue sharing. But first off, let's get to the first topic of this episode, which is about the issue surrounding Kenni Burns, the head coach of Kent State University, and the entire university itself. So let's just get right to it. I will provide links to these articles. There are three of them in total, starting with these two in the description box below. This is going to be talking about Kenni Burns, the issue going on with him right now. So, written by Doug Samuels of footballscoop.com. This was back on March 27th, not too long ago, a few days ago. Kent State head coach Kenni Burns reportedly placed on leave. Let's just get right to it. He has been placed on administrative leave. ESPN's Pete Thamel, he was the first to share the news. Now, sources tell Football Scoop the decision comes after a lengthy, extensive investigation into the Golden Flashes head coach, who just wrapped up his second season at the helm, not successfully, mind you. The program was just days away from their kickoff of spring practices, so the timing of this was really suspect to begin with. As it goes on here to say in Football Scoop, Kent State has finished 1-11 and 0-12 in two seasons under Burns, who previously served as a top assistant for PJ Fleck at Minnesota and Western Michigan, yada, yada, yada. And then, despite the 1-11 record after his first season, the vice president and director of athletics, Randall L. Richmond, rewarded Burns with a one-year contract extension in February of last year, which would take him through the 2028 season, for whatever reason that happened. Now, back in the last fall of 2024, a story also surfaced that Burns was being taken to court over $24,000 in credit card debt. Now, for those of you who know a thing or two about credit card debt, you know that's a very tough situation to get out of. Keep that in mind. It just goes on here to say about the Golden Flashes and their poor record. I'm also going to switch over to what James H. Jimenez from Hustlebelt, SB Nation, what he had to write, which isn't all that much different from what Football Scoop provided, but I'll get into this for a little bit. So, as I said before, Kenni Burns, he had a 5-year deal. It was an extension that he just got. Burns is set to make $525,000 for the 2025 campaign if he were to see it. And now it's just subject of ire both on field, where the Flashes currently hold a 21 game losing streak and no wins versus FBS competition in 2 years, and off the field, as it is saying here, Burns was named a defendant in a lawsuit back in September 2024 about credit card debts. Now, as of November 2024, Burns had not responded to the lawsuit despite being served via certified mail. The case was later dismissed in January 2025 at the plaintiff's request and subsequently vacated. But as you can tell here, guys, there's just something going on concerning Kenni Burns and Kent State University that's really not getting out there to the public. And there have been some chat and mumblings going on that there might be some sort of like scandal going on, like point shaving, uh, gambling related issues that if you go through the history of sports anywhere, collegiate or professional, you would know that gambling, betting on sports, it becomes a very muddy situation. I mean, just look at the whole thing with Pete Rose, who recently passed away. Pete Rose, you know, he was banned for life from Major League Baseball because he bet on baseball. Not against his own team, but he just bet on baseball games. And that got him to be kicked out permanently from the game. So you keep that in mind, stuff like that. And also way back when the Black Sox scandal, way back in 1919, with all that going with 8 men, 8 players of the White Sox team getting kicked out. This has been a just a generational historic thing where if you bet on any sport and you're involved in that sport, you're going to wind up in trouble. This could be where it leads to. We don't know the whole story yet about what's going on with Kenni Burns and his credit card debt. You know, even if he doesn't get hit legally by stuff, this is still a bad look. This is still a bad look for him, and this is still a bad look for the Kent State Golden Flashes in general. And as an outside observer, I mean, I support the Ohio Bobcats, but I'm also keeping an eye on Mid American Conference related news. And I look at this and I'm like, what is going on here? Kent State University, they have long been a school that has been seen as an anchor of sorts for the Mid American Conference. Sometimes they would have good seasons, but more often than not, they've had really, lackluster, really bad seasons on the field, especially on the football field. Now, in other sports, Kent State might be doing better in, but football, especially, Kent State just does not have a clear grasp on what they want to do on the football field. And honestly, I said this last year before last year began that if Kenni Burns didn't improve on his record, that he should be on the hot seat. Now, he went 1-11 in 2023 and he went 0-12 in 2024, and yet for some reason he's still the head coach of Kent State. There's no real vision for Kent State University. There's no real good vision for Kent State. In my opinion, Kent State has very little to no institutional control right now, and it appears obvious when you read a story like this. And honestly, this is embarrassing. If you want me to be honest with you guys, this is embarrassing for not only Kent State University on their own level, but for the Mid American Conference as a whole. We need to start getting better news reports about what's going on with the MAC, with their schools, not just one school, but with all the schools in the MAC. And when you see something like this with Kent State University, if you support any other MAC school, you have to be shaking your head right now, which I am. You know, you can't feel good about this. Kent State has no institutional control and they have no awareness about what's going on around them. If they continue to let Kenni Burns be the head coach for their football team, then they got serious issues. Regardless of how this shakes out with Kenni Burns individually, it's not right. Because you wind up having these questions being asked about, oh, are they throwing games? Oh, are they like betting on games? These head coaches like Kenni Burns is like, oh, why did he call a timeout in a specific spot so that this other team can kick another field goal? Is he being shady about something? It's like you don't want that. If you support, college football or any other sport, you can't have that. So it's pretty it's upsetting and embarrassing, if you ask me, when you have to read stories like this. And it should not happen. It just should not happen whatsoever. And I'm hoping any Kent State University official that may be watching this, I doubt it, but if they are ever watching this, they have to come to their senses. They have to start showing some common sense here and realize that, first of all, they got to let Kenni Burns go permanently, not just put him on administrative leave. They have to just fire him. Kenni Burns should have been fired yesterday, not been given any sort of contract extension whatsoever. He has shown over the last 2 seasons that he doesn't know what he's doing as a head coach. Maybe as an assistant coach, maybe as a position coach, he might do way better in. But as a head coach, he is not ready. He has shown it, and he has to be shown the door. I'm being honest. I'm being brutally honest here. Kent State, I've heard a lot of stories about how Kent State is lagging behind, and that's been a topic I've been wanting to talk about concerning both Kent State and Akron. To a lesser extent at this point, Akron, at least Akron is trying to show some willingness to compete in comparison to Kent State. Kent State is just becoming a joke. I don't mean to be harsh, I don't mean to be biased in any way, but Kent State, I mean, it's hard to feel sorry for that situation, especially if Kent State themselves are not helping themselves out. They have to improve their facilities, their training facilities, their practice facilities, and they're not doing that. They're not doing right by their players, they're not doing right by their coaches or any other part of their staff. It's just embarrassing. So if you live in Kent, Ohio, or you're associated in any way with the Kent State Golden Flashes, you have to start asking hard questions about where do you want to go as a university? Where do you want your sports teams to go? Do you want to still compete on the FBS level? Are you going to start acting like it? Are you going to make the necessary improvements to compete, even on the MAC level, even in the Mid American Conference? Because if you're not doing that, then you might as well just throw your hands up and say, you know what, we're just going to drop down to FCS. I'm being brutally honest. Kent State, if Kent State is going to waste our time, then they have to drop down to FCS. Just admit defeat, drop down to FCS, count your losses, and rebuild. Completely rebuild. Because this is not a good look for any conference. I'm just being brutally honest. But anyway, I'm going to provide those links to these stories down below in the description box, and you guys can provide your own comments on the situation. Um, Hopefully, it's not the worst case scenario concerning this with Kenni Burns and Kent State, but right now, initially, in my opinion, it does not look good. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's move on to the other part, the back half of this episode, where it's talking more about revenue sharing. Now, let me pull this up so I can read. This is from Ross Dellenger, our good old friend Ross Dellenger of Yahoo Sports. And for the most part, Ross, he does such a great job reporting on college sports. So no surprise that we're pulling up another article of his. So anyway, this is mainly talking about uh, the thing revolving around the NCAA basketball tournament, their opening weekend, which has since gone on for a little bit, getting towards the Final Four. So this was written back on March 26th by Ross Dellenger. I can't read the whole article at length because it's a very long article, but I'm going to be providing this link to this article down below in the description box so you guys can check it out. It's got some very interesting comments and quotes for you guys to take in. And let's just start here with this. As the NCAA tournament's second weekend arrives, quoting Ross Dellenger's article, the potential spending disparity is at the forefront of many minds. Quoting you know who, people have raised the issue with me, and they are raising it more frequently right now, Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, said last week. It's something we are having conversations about at every meeting. I'm confident in our school's ability to compete, meaning the SEC's, but it does raise a set of questions. Now, I do believe him when it comes to that quote. So there's that quote. Scrolling on down here a little bit, but for those fellow Division One schools without a football program or one that competes in FCS or even at the group of six level, group of whatever number level, flexibility exists to heavily invest in a singular sport with the goal of qualifying and winning one of America's most popular events, meaning the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Big East Conference schools next year can pay $6 million or more to their basketball team, said Houston Athletic Director Eddie Nunez. And that's a game changer. And it just goes on to state the money figures that conferences like set, when it comes to spending for their rosters, especially basketball rosters. As many as a dozen non-power league Division One schools, many of them in the Big East, are planning to spend at least $5 million on their men's basketball roster next year, with a smaller group hoping to reach the $6 million and $7 million marks. Those with knowledge of the plans told Yahoo Sports. So again, I'm going to be skipping here a little bit. And basically, the gist of this article, when you read between the lines here, guys, is that here's this highlighted paragraph header here. Why does football matter more? It's basically telling you that football drives the bus. No matter how successful college basketball is, and don't get me wrong, college basketball is a very successful sport. It will always be number two in comparison to football when it comes to generating revenue, making money. It should be that obvious by now, guys. Football drives the bus, and college basketball is in the passenger seat at least. I mean, they're still in the bus, but you're not driving it, in other words. So, another interesting thing to note here is that the most common formula is 70 to 85% to football, 10 to 20% to men's basketball, and the final 10 to 15% to the other sports. That's basically the ratio, the formula that most schools apparently use when it comes to splitting the money when they're spending on their rosters. The distribution formula is generating strife among a school's own coaches, each arguing for more of the revenue share pie, especially at those blue blood, quote unquote, basketball programs such as Duke, Kansas, and North Carolina, for example. Now, Kansas athletic director Travis Goff, he had something to say here. At a place where football matters, we can't justify $7 to $9 million to be shared with basketball, he said. But we do think we have some innate advantages at Kansas, at his school. Coaching, culture, institutional brand, fan base, facilities, they will all move the needle. Yeah, I mean, unless you're a school like that, where you can easily get resources for your college basketball program, it's going to be really hard to compete on that level in that sport. It's very interesting. I find it very interesting how you can split money between sports. And this is why many people are saying that the other sports, like the lesser known sports, even baseball and hockey, to be honest with you, they're going to be lagging behind when it comes to who gets what, who gets this much or that much. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out like within 3 to 5 years from now. And this is just the start of it, guys. When you're reading an article like this is just the start of it. Um, in my opinion, I find it to be an unstable spending foundation. It may work short term, but it's not going to work long term for many of these schools. Um, and again, mumblings and chats about this is that this may lead to some sort of cheating. It kind of ties in back with the Kenni Burns stuff. When you have like spending models that each school has, you wonder if someone is still doing something under the table in order to get this money, in order to get these resources so that they can pay players and coaches and get them on board. It's always a possibility. That's all I'm saying, guys. It's always a possibility that you might have something like this happen, even in the era of NIL, transfer portal, and all that. And I bring this up. I bring this article by Ross Dellenger up because a certain someone by the name of David Benedict, he is the athletic director for UConn, University of Connecticut. Um, from what I've heard from him over the years, he sounds like a very intelligent guy, sounds like a sharp guy. I've commented on the UConn Huskies a couple times on Bobcat Corner, sometimes to my detriment, just being honest, but because UConn fans don't like what I have to say about their football program. But going back to David Benedict himself, I have a ton of respect for him as an athletic director. I believe he knows what he's doing. And he had some interesting comments in this article. He shared his thoughts about, the spending model for schools. He said, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, not word for word, but I'm paraphrasing. He said that at minimum, schools would need $5 million to spend for men's basketball, $1 to $2 million to spend for women's basketball, and then the remaining $5 million to spend on just a G number level conference football team. That's basically the ratio that he's going with, and I find that very interesting because it gives you like an insight as to what David Benedict and officials over there at UConn are thinking. And UConn is at like a fork in the road, so to speak, with their football program, with all their sports programs. And obviously, in this article by Ross Dellenger, it's highlighted so much about the Big East as a conference, how strong they are in basketball. They're primarily a basketball conference. They don't do football at all. They focus primarily on basketball, and they do well at it. And I've always said that UConn has always had a successful basketball program for both men's and women's basketball. One of the best basketball programs that you'll see in college sports, no doubt about it. And but it also does come into question about, if you're UConn, you have all the success in basketball, but if you want to get in on what's going on with football, you have an independent football program right now. You're not associated with any conference. Mumblings in chat are going on that you're wanting to get into the Big 12 so bad. You want to do it, and that's great. You want to do it, great. It seems to be that it's going to be a power conference or bust for UConn when it comes to their football team. Either they're going to get on with the Big 12 or the ACC or nothing at all. And if that's how they want to go about doing that, then so be it. I'm at that point where it's like, okay, if that's where you want to go, guys, that's it. I'm not even thinking about UConn when it comes to stuff like the Mid American Conference at this point. It's just a battle not worth fighting for anymore. But anyway, private capital and private equity, this is where it all circles around. When you read an article like this by Ross Dellenger and how schools are going about spending for their sports rosters, depending on the sport, it it brings it into a better focus why conferences like the Big 12 are looking into private capital or private equity, and they're pursuing help from these private equity firms like Deloitte, for example. Deloitte is mentioned in this article as well, by the way. It's something to keep an eye on, guys, because from what I've seen, not just in sports, but in many other different industries, whenever whenever a private equity firm is mentioned, very rarely is it mentioned in a good way. Very rarely is it mentioned in a good light. You hope that you can get a return on your investment when you ask for a private equity firm to help you. But when your business goes south or sideways, even, and the money's not coming in, and then you have this private equity firm coming in through the back door telling you, yeah, you got to pay us. Come on. You got to really evaluate what you want to do as an entity, as an organization. So it's just something to keep an eye on. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about all this in the description, in the comment section below. Links are provided in the description box below. The Kenni Burns thing, that bothers me. It does, because it's something that should not be happening to any school, but it is for Kent State. And this article about revenue sharing with the Big East Conference, it's no wonder why UConn stays so tightly together with the Big East Conference, because they know it works. But yeah, you have to crunch the economics. You have to crunch down the economics of what's going on with each sport to have a better idea about what's going on with your football program or your basketball program or any other sport that you follow. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you like this content, please give it a like. Please give this video a like. Share it with your friends. Um, Obviously, I enjoy doing this, guys. So if you guys have any suggestions about what I could be reporting on, let me know in the comment section as well. This is Bobcat Corner, and this is Stephen Vitt reporting yet again. Thank you guys so much. Have a good day.